I don't know who you are, but welcome to the Irish Photography Podcast. Sit back, relax, and listen about cameras, gear, settings, stories, and all things photography. Join Darren on Ireland's Best Photography Podcast. Let's go.
Very welcome to the Irish Photography Podcast, episode 156. I'm joined by somebody who I've never met, but I have met. And I've reached out to him a couple of years ago when I was visiting in the US, and I really want to get into that story and learn more about his own style of photography because he's a phenomenal photographer. So, welcome to the Irish Photography Podcast, Luke Collins. How are you getting on?
Thanks, Darren. It's good to be here. I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Very good now, thanks. Very good, yeah. I'm excited to get you on. I'm excited to finally talk to you because I know we've been messaging and back and forth over the last number of years, but I really wanted to get you on because I think, a lot of people should know more about your playground and the area that you take photographs in, and also you go further afield as well, and you're not just staying locally, and I want to learn more about that as well. So yeah, I'm excited to hear your story and the background, I suppose, in relation to your photography too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm happy to talk about all that. And I know we've been following each other on social media I think since you came to my neck of the woods. And so it's good to see your face and hear your voice and I
Yeah.
guess meet in person or
Yeah.
over Zoom.
Albeit virtually for sure right now. So I suppose before we get into all that, tell me, who is Luke Collins?
Oh, well, I am just a guy from Wisconsin. I grew up in Door County, Wisconsin, which is the area which you mentioned, which we'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about more. Born and raised here. I guess in a nutshell, I spent my 20s in Minneapolis. I went to college there and then just kind of stuck around for a few years and lived and worked in the cities. And then about 10 or 11 years ago, I decided I was kind of done with the city life.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved back home. My area is a really small town. The town I live in, Sturgeon Bay, is 10,000 people. So
Okay.
it's a big different, it's a lot different than the big city of
Big
the
cities.
Twin Cities. So
Yeah.
and then ever since I've been back, I've kind of got into photography once I moved home,
Mm-hmm.
and just from there, just kind of been growing the photography business and kind of just getting more and more into it and falling
Mm-hmm.
deeper into a
The
hobby
passion.
that became a job. So
Yeah, it's great. I mean, photography is phenomenal for that because it is something I think that you can really throw your heart and soul into, and you can really get the rewards as well, incremental rewards in relation to looking back over the last number of years and going, geez, when I started out, this is what I could do, and now look what I can do, and such like that as well. And you have visual representation to be able to look over that, which I think is phenomenal about photography.
yeah, it's really cool sometimes to take a look back at some of your earlier photos and, kind of see where you have improved over the
Mm-hmm.
years.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I see a photo from, I like Yosemite or something, and, I want to go back and,
Mm-hmm.
try something else or take that photo differently this time, just with
Mm-hmm.
the skills that you've learned over the years. So, it's really fun, to see your own personal growth
Mm-hmm.
as a photographer, by looking back through your archives.
Absolutely. And I suppose, tell me, how did you get started or when did you get started in photography? So you say, when you moved back home, had you always had a passion for photography before that, or did it start then? Where did it all this begin?
Yeah, so it's always something that I've kind of had like this interest in,
Okay.
but it's not something that I ever pursued. As a kid, I loved those disposable cameras. I'd get those and just, but that's as far as I went. I never really got into it any more than that until, like I said, was when I moved home. My sister is also a photographer,
Oh, nice.
and she took it seriously and still does, but she's been into it longer than me. So, kind of seeing her photos and what she was doing I just decided I'm just going to go buy a camera. So I went to Best Buy, which is a local electronics store here in the
Hmm.
States. And and I just bought a Nikon D7100 with I think a 18 to 200 lens.
Okay.
And then I
Took off.
turned it to manual right away and just
Oh,
tried,
wow.
you know. Yeah, well, I didn't really know what I was doing with it, but I heard, as a beginner, the pros say you have to shoot manual, so that's
Sure
what I
thing. Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was also good to learn that way, but that's kind of another story. But oh, sorry, my alarm is going off here. Okay.
No problem.
Um,
That was the alarm for the original time we were supposed to record instead of my damn
yes, it
hour going
was, and
forward. Yeah.
I apologize for that.
No problem.
Um, But yeah, so yeah, I just kind of bought a camera and just started going to the local parks and nature areas and just, you know, seeing what I
Snapping
can do
happy.
with it. And it
Yeah.
just kind of grew from there.
And you know what? Isn't that probably the best way to be able to learn as well? Learn by doing, you know. I mean, you can go and you can learn in the book and you may not ever have that translated into the physical holding of the camera. I mean, yeah, I was very
Hmm.
similar to that, you know. I mean, you mentioned in relation to your sister. For me, it was my brother, and I grew up. My brother was always had a camera, and he would have been back in the film days, and he was developing film in my bedroom that I shared with him. And he was always cute because what he did was that he'd always make sure that all of the solutions were never spilt on his side of the room; they were always spilt on my side of the room. So I grew up with photography around me, and it was interesting that when I finally said, I'm going to try and give this a go too. I mean, the amount of images that came out blank on film because I didn't know what I was doing was immense. But you learn quickly then because it's not cheap to get things like that developed back then, you know. So you can go, okay, what did I do wrong? So yeah, I like that approach. It's good. It stands to you as well to this day that you've learned from that way because you know what went wrong and you know not to be able to have those mistakes again, let's just say, to be able to understand the different scenarios you're going to take the photograph in.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like personally, some people might be able to read a book but for me, I learn hands-on. So,
Hmm.
you watch the YouTube videos, you read, the photography books, but you really don't learn and understand it until you actually get out and do it.
100%, 100%. And you mentioned in relation to getting the camera and off you go into the landscape and such like that. Have you tried other different genres of photography? Because I know you're from a landscape point of view, but have you tried wedding photographies, christenings, bar mitzvahs, everything? Have you tried all that type of photography as well?
Yeah, actually, I shoot about between 20 and 30 weddings every year.
Nice.
So I'm that's kind of the other side of what I do. So yeah, weddings, engagements, family sessions, things like that. I've been doing for a number of years now. And landscapes obviously is kind of my passion.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I've tried street photography and macro, and I really didn't like street photography that much, and macro it was fun, but again, it's just kind of not
Short
really for
shelf
me.
life.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm kind of stuck with the nature, the landscapes, and all that.
Well, you know what I mean. I always pigeonhole myself in saying that I'm a landscape photographer. That's it. Don't ask me to take a photograph of anything else because I always say it many times in the podcast. I don't have to pose a rock, whereas I have to pose
Yes.
people. And for me, I couldn't deal with the pressure. I don't think of having you get one shot at getting this. Pardon the pun, one shot, but you get one opportunity at getting this for a group of people that are there together. And if you mess that up, you can't exactly ring them up and go, "Come here, let's come back again, and we're going to try all that again." I wouldn't be able to do it. So fair play to you for doing over 20 weddings a year, you know?
Yeah, thank you. It can be a lot of pressure, but I always say too, mountains and rivers and lakes don't pay me to take their picture.
This is
So
true.
um, the way I got into weddings. I was just at a local art fair, and these people came up and they asked me if I shot weddings. I said I've never shot weddings, so like no, basically. But
Hmm.
they kept asking, and they're like, "Oh, that's okay." And so they had me shoot their little, 20-person wedding. That was about 2014, um, and I did it. I had fun. I liked it. I had a lot to learn, obviously, about wedding
Yeah.
photography.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. They just saw me selling my landscape prints, and kind
Wow.
of the rest is history.
Yeah, as they say, yeah, the rest is history. It's about timing, really, I suppose, really, in life. It's about luck and timing and ability at the third point. But, if you weren't there in that position, they weren't persistent, you probably would never have jumped, I suppose, to try that either. So it was good that you did that. And I think it's a good
Yeah.
skill set to have too, to be able to turn your hand to any type of photography. Whereas me, like I say, no, I can't do it. I mean, I'll only be sticking from a landscape point of view. And actually, speaking of landscapes, I mean, when we first virtually met,
Hmm.
when I reached out to you, because my wife is from Wisconsin, and I'd always go to the States every year before the kids were younger, and then as the kids came, I'd go every 2 years. And we had an opportunity to go in the autumn, and I'd always generally go in the summer. And I said, okay,
Hmm.
I'm going in the autumn. There's one place that I wanted to go to, and that is Highway 42 in Door County. So I reached out to you to find out what was the fall colors like, and thankfully you got back to me, and it was a great trip. So tell it the listeners, I suppose, in relation to that one particular area, anyway, rather than me describe it. You as the native local, tell the listeners, what was I chasing that day?
Sure. So, at the very Door County is a peninsula sticking out into Lake Michigan, and at the very tip of Door County is Highway 42. But it's not your normal highway. It's not
Mm-hmm.
designed like a normal highway. The road curves back and forth, like really strong curves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really unusual. I don't know if there's a road like it. The closest thing I can think of is Lombard Street in San
San Francisco.
Francisco,
Yeah.
but still not quite the same. So yeah, so this road was designed a long time ago by a local landscape architect. His name was Jens Jensen,
Okay.
and he did it on purpose. I think it was just to. I think the official story is he designed it to get people to slow down and take in the nature around them.
Okay.
Um, but from where the beginning of where the road starts to curve, there's a viewpoint kind of on top of a little ridge where you can just look right down the road, and just it's you can just get great photographs. And you were there in the fall. That's really the best time I feel to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's just one of those places that's one of the local icons. Where
It's
you just
unique.
have to go get a photo. It's very unique.
It is, and when I first ever came across an image of that, I didn't think it was real. I thought somebody had gone into Photoshop, and because in the States most roads are straight, right? So there's not that many
Yeah, oh yeah.
corners, and to get, I think, is it around 7 or 8, maybe 9 corners in a sequence, left, right, left, right, left, right, and as you say, the one position that you can stand, see right down the barrel of that, and to get
Mhm,
those colors is absolutely incredible. And I said, I have to see, is that real? And I just realized that it was real. And I went there the first time in the midsummer, and I was like, okay, it's not as nice as it could be. And I wanted to go back for the autumn colors or for the fall colors. And it's
mhm.
so unique. It's incredible. And you say about, wanting people to slow down. I don't know if I saw, when I was there, I don't think people slowed down during it. It was like as if they were doing Formula One and going into different chicanes going down it as well. But it's really, really beautiful place. And thank you very much for giving me the steer in relation to the colors, which is what I was looking for on that day, because I'd been watching. You guys have a phenomenal tool, which is the fall forecast. We don't have that here in Ireland because Ireland is such a small country. But I looked and
Mhm,
saw where the colors would be at certain times, and when I was there, I was like, okay, I'm going to be getting there right at peak. But I was thinking, hang on a second, maybe I'm not, because I was in a different part of Wisconsin. And then when I looked and I saw Door County and it was right at peak fall colors, I was like, okay, I have to go there. I was going there for that
mhm.
road, but I ended up spending 3 days on Door County because it's incredible. Tell us about that peninsula. It's not just your ordinary peninsula. I think there's something special in relation to it, because everywhere else I had missed all the colors, but they were still in
Mhm.
peak there. I mean, it's some playground to have.
Yeah, it's a really great place. Like you said, it's a gorgeous place. So like I said before, it's a peninsula that sticks out into Lake Michigan, one of the Great Lakes here in the
Hmm.
States. And yeah, all the way up and down the peninsula, it's incredibly scenic. All along the shore, there's little towns like little villages that are, a little bit touristy, but
Hmm.
really quaint, Hallmark card
Hmm. Hmm.
type of look.
Yeah.
And we have like 5 state parks up and down the peninsula. We have I think like 18 or something county parks, some of which are
Right.
just as beautiful as the state parks,
Hmm.
11 lighthouses, sprawling farmland. I mean, there's everything here. So, as a nature photographer, there's just so many opportunities all the way up and down the peninsula, for awesome photos. And like you said, with fall colors, it's gorgeous, because there's different areas around the peninsula, and I'm not really an expert in like the biodiversity of the trees or anything, but
Hmm.
one part of the peninsula might have more maples, so you get those reds, and then you'll get the yellow from the birch, in another part. So
Hmm. Hmm.
it's pretty cool, and
It
yeah, you
is.
can have a lot of fun here as a photographer.
I fully agree with you. And there's an area as well, actually. Maybe I'm going to butcher the name. I think it's a Cave Point. Where I
Yeah,
think that, and I couldn't get over the waves that were coming in there off a lake, and I was thinking, this is a lake. I mean, I'm not used to a lake being so big, obviously, So I mean,
sure.
but like the water was hitting off of there, but not only hitting off there, but you've got a beautiful set of shapes that are in the rocks as well, which have been carved out by this water, and then sitting on top of those rocks are lovely trees that are just begging to be photographed, and that was one thing that blew me away, and I was thinking, is this? I thought I was at the coast, but I wasn't at the
Hmm.
coast. I was at the side of a lake. Like, so, I mean, like, you are in a very open area. I mean, Lake Michigan is huge. And in the
Hmm.
winter time as well, it gets quite harsh, and because that whole area freezes and such like that as well. I mean, I haven't been there in winter. I don't even know if I'd ever dream about trying to get there in the winter. But I've seen some of your photographs in the winter, and it's absolutely phenomenal. It's like, have you got a favorite location or area to shoot in different seasons throughout the year, but particularly in winter?
Yeah, you mentioned it. Cave Point is it's my favorite place to photograph here in
It's
Door
beautiful.
County. It like you described it perfectly. And the nice thing about the winter, you get the waves crashing up, and then the cold air will freeze the ice, and it'll cover. You'll just get these like icicles on the trees, on the cliffs, everywhere you look, is just covered in ice, and the ice changes every day, every week. So anytime you go back in the winter, the shapes of the ice it'll be different. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's one place I can go back over and over, and know I can, have a great place to photograph. And it's fun to have that kind of place. I'm sure most of your listeners have one place they like to go to
Hmm.
test their creativity, try something different than they got there last time, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Cave Point is definitely my muse, as they could say, for if you can
It's a
say that
nice
about a
muse to
park,
have.
but
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a nice muse to
definitely.
have. Yeah, for sure. And like, tell me, when you think about, when I think about ice, right? You guys get ice, but you get
Mhm.
damn cold ice. I mean, the air, as you say, freezes the water and such like that. And the
Yeah.
water is solid. Or can you walk out, or is it only close enough in relation to the shoreline? How much ice goes on Lake Michigan in the depths of winter?
Well, Lake Michigan itself usually doesn't freeze over. You'll
Okay.
get ice buildup along the shore. Um, but on the western side of the Door County Peninsula, it's on it's on a bay called Green Bay, and
Hmm.
that's small enough where it will freeze over. And you can walk out there. You can, there's ice fishermen. They'll drive their trucks out there and
Right.
snowmobile out there, and yeah, it stays frozen probably, a good 3 months out of the year at least, where you can go out there, and
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
it's pretty incredible. It's pretty cool. It's just now starting to thaw, so um, and yeah, I think it froze over in early January. So
Mad.
yeah, the ice
I
fishermen love it up here.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can't get my head around it. I mean, my wife was telling me that the river that she lives on would freeze and that they go down to the town on a skidoo. And I'm like, what, on the river? They're, yeah, the river would freeze. I'm like, what? The river would, how does I couldn't get my head around it in relation to that. And that's a small river, so I mean, that's
Hmm.
the Fox River. So that will freeze, right? But like, when I think about the vastness of the areas there, and life still goes on, and everybody still gets on with doing what they need to do, but it's the
Hmm.
depths and harshest area I've ever seen. So I don't know if I'll ever get to there in the wintertime. I'll probably live it vicariously, looking at your
Sure.
images and such like that as well. Um, and I think is would I be right to say that is fall, autumn colors your favorite time of the year to photograph in Door County, or
Yeah,
would it be winter?
I think it is winter actually.
Ah, okay,
Spring it's kind of gets muddy, but in the springtime we get a lot of blossoms. We have a lot of cherry orchards here,
okay.
so we get the beautiful cherry blossoms, and that actually is a lot of fun to photograph.
Hmm.
And then summer's great. Fall we have beautiful fall colors, but I really like winter because it changes so much, like depending on the way the ice is going to form. Where the ice shoves kind of are going to pile up in the spring, and it's one other nice thing too is it's not so busy.
Okay.
So you go to a place like Cave Point we were talking about in the summer, and there's
It's heaving.
probably going to be 30 photographers walking
Yeah,
around.
it's heaving.
Where
Yeah.
in the winter you could be the only one there. So um, yeah, there's a lot to like about winter. Yeah, it gets cold, very cold, but just bundle up and it's part of the
Get on
fun,
with
I
it.
think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've seen a couple of things actually that you've done in the winter time there. Um is it the start of the winter? I can't remember, or is maybe the end of winter going into spring with the ships. And as they go
Sure.
through, is that the beginning of winter, the last ships that will come through, and then as it freeze over, or do they go all through the winter period of time? Because watching that and following that again on your socials is crazy. Some of those ships that come through are huge.
Yeah, they can be up to I think up to 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
And the town I live in, Sturgeon Bay, has one of the larger shipyards on the Great Lakes. So in about mid-January every year, when the shipping lanes close because they freeze up, all the ships who are going to stay there through the winter, they come in, to get repairs and upgrades, and they'll come right through downtown because we have a kind of a bay, canal that kind of goes through town. So you get
Hmm.
these massive ships coming through right through our downtown, and yeah, that's a highlight for me every winter to photograph as many of the ships as I can. Um,
And
yeah,
you do it differently too, though, because you take it to the next level. I mean, you send your drone up and you send your drone to follow them. And I mean, like, what's the name of the place there? But there's a naval base and there's the red lighthouse at the end of that canal going on to Lake Michigan.
yeah, that's the North Pierhead Lighthouse here in
That's the
Sturgeon
one.
Bay.
Yeah.
Um,
You've got some phenomenal shots from there with the drone as well. I mean, like, has the drone brought your pardon the pun up a level? I know it's up a level, it's gone a couple of 100 feet, but has it elevated your photography by using that to capture those images?
Yeah, it gives you a different way of looking at familiar places. I grew up here, and I've been photographing here from the ground for years.
Hmm.
And but when I got the drone, it was almost like exploring the
Fresh.
county from a whole new, I guess, well, perspective. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's just a totally fresh way of seeing things. So it's fun to get different compositions that you can't get from a tripod.
Hmm. Hmm.
And playing around with different altitudes to get different compositions. Yeah, it's really been a kind of a fun addition to my gear kit.
I regret actually because I didn't fly my drone there in North Point because it's next to a naval base, and I was thinking, okay, I can't. No, there's no way I'm going to be able to fly my drone here. They'll come out and they'll march me off. And I remember walking in there. There's a big red line. You've got public side, and on the other side is you do not step on this line. I was like, okay, I'm in the States, you get pulled for something that you think would be innately here. So I never flew my drone, but you have some
Mhm.
beautiful shots of that. And that's another totally unusual structure to be going right out into the bay, and it's bright red. And I got some lovely shots of it there sitting or standing under the framework that leads out to it. But from a
Mhm.
drone, it's incredible. I mean, hats off on some of the shots you've taken of that. It's incredible to follow through in them.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's again, that lighthouse is probably about 5 minutes from my house, so it's in one of those places that I go to quite often.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, I do like flying the drone. You do have to be careful with the base, but as long as you're not flying directly over the base or taking off or landing from the base, then
You're
um,
fine.
then you're fine. They're not really going to bother you, um, but yeah, you do have to be careful. But yeah, it's a great a great little lighthouse. It's not the biggest lighthouse around, but
Hmm. Hmm.
it's bright red against the blue of Lake Michigan. So, and then there's like a overhead walkway that goes out to it, where you actually walk underneath. So you can
Hmm.
use that for compositions and leading lines, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a great little pier, great lighthouse to photograph.
It is, and there's a secondary lighthouse as well as part of the naval base there too. And I
Hmm.
used that nicely because I lined up a photograph on photopills, whatever it was, and I was thinking, okay, the sun's going to come up here. Checked on the weather forecast, and there was a tiny, tiny, tiny gap in the clouds in the horizon, and it worked out when I was there, which was great. But the moment that the light came up and broke, I quickly turned around, and you got your traditional looking lighthouse behind that, and I got some
Hmm.
shots as well. So it's a two for oneer basically in that location. But I'd love to be able to experience it again in ice, because that all would be
Hmm.
frozen there, wouldn't it?
Yeah, sometimes you can't really even walk out to it because the whole pier is just covered in too much ice. So you have to
Wow,
have, your ice
cleats.
cleats. But yeah, I mean, the icicles again, just like at Cave Point, will just hang from the walkway over your head, and everywhere. It's gorgeous. I
Yeah.
mean, ice it's just so beautiful, and it's a great subject to photograph because it always changes. It's always different.
Mm, mm.
So it changes the familiar to something new every time you go.
100%, 100%. And I suppose, look, if anybody has ever visited Wisconsin and hasn't visited Door County, go to Door County. I mean, we've been waxing lyrical about it here for the last 10 minutes, but it is absolutely a beautiful place, full of photography, full of
Hmm.
opportunity, and full of beautiful things as well, I think. To be able to, explore and find something off the beaten track. I know you're lucky, as you say, it's your playground. What a playground to be able to have as a back garden. Absolutely incredible. Um, Luke, I've loved hearing about that and reminiscing in relation to that area. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a very, very quick break and I'll be right back because I want to talk about your adventures that you go on outside of Wisconsin next. So we'll be right back after this. If you're enjoying this episode of the Irish Photography Podcast, why not jump back and listen to the back catalogue we have of episodes, where you'll get some great insights from fantastic guests, gear reviews, lots of hints and tips, and above all else, keeping you company while you drive or relax. Thanks very much for listening. Please consider subscribing, leaving a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Irish Photography Podcast. So, Lucas, like I said there on the first part, I'm really excited now to hear about your adventures away from Door County. So, tell me, where did you go this year? It's an annual event, I believe, that you do as well. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but where did you go this year?
Yeah, so every year I like to take a trip. Sometimes it's a family trip with my wife and daughter. Sometimes it's a solo trip. And this year I took a solo trip to Death Valley National Park
Nice.
in California. And yeah, I spent, I think, about 6 or 7 days in the park and the surrounding areas, just kind of exploring the desert. And
Mm,
it's amazing. I haven't really spent any time in the desert,
never been to
so it
one,
was
so I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a totally new experience, a new ecosystem. So I
Hmm.
didn't really know what to expect, but it was absolutely a blast. I loved it there. I loved the park. I say the park, Death Valley, is probably the most fun park to photograph that I've ever visited.
Nice.
I visited not all the parks, the national parks, but a decent number of them, and I don't think
Okay.
I've ever had as much fun taking photos as I did there.
And tell me, what areas in Death Valley did you visit? I mean, like, it's a big area, so it's not exactly a small park, you know. So, like, you
Yeah.
did you go to the mud flats?
Yes, I did. So I stayed. My campsite was in like Furnace Creek, which is one of the main kind of towns.
Okay.
And that's a good central spot to hit up all the hot spots. So I went down like Badwater Basin, where the salt kind of forms
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
valley. It's like I
Mm-hmm.
think it's 282 feet below sea level. Um,
Well,
so I spent my first sunset there and just got extremely fortunate with just a gorgeous sunset, beautiful colors, clouds.
nice.
And then, yeah, I explored yeah, pretty much all the hot spots, Zabriskie Point, uh, a, a few of the different salt flats. And then where else did I go? Well, the sand dunes. That was a huge draw and
Ah,
a highlight for me. I spend more time in the sand dunes than anywhere else in the park.
yeah, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt. And when you go off and you say you had 9 days there, right? Um, I noticed that when I went to the States and I came back, I had to go through a multitude of images. Now, I know that if I had gone to the sand dunes, I would have brimmed so many SD cards, it would have been a criminal offense. How many shots did you end up taking when you got back?
Yeah, I think my folder has about 3,700 exposures
Wow.
in it.
Wow.
Now I exposure bracket, focus stack, and I did
Okay,
some
yeah,
night
yeah.
photos, so I have but that's still a lot of exposures to go through and sort through and you know, keyword and all that. But
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to be going through that trip for probably years,
No doubt. No
um,
doubt.
because it was just it's so easy. You go to the sand dunes and you see all these different compositions just coming out towards you, and I definitely was not shy with the shutter button while I was there.
Well, you know what? At the end of the day, I think for me, when I'm starting to, you know, look at areas that I'd like to go visit, it's high on my list as well. Because for that exact reason, I mean, the light changes so frequently. The sand dunes
Mm.
are different every single day. There's nothing going to be the same twice, let's just say. And then you get early morning light. You can get your blue hour light, you can get your harsh light, you can get your shadows. I mean, I would have brimmed, I'd say, 30 cards in an afternoon. I know that for a fact. And I suppose, would that have been your favorite location that you took there because you spent so much time there now that you've gotten back and started to look at the images? Or was there something that you visited and took images and now you're looking at the images going, geez, I'd like to actually explore that a bit more?
Um, yeah, I even going through the photos, I really did enjoy the sand dunes the most. But while I was in the area, I did kind of take a day trip, spent the night in the Alabama Hills area of California. It's about a 2-hour drive from the park, and
Okay.
that's an area that I guess they film a lot of movies there, and I've just heard a lot about it. So I figured
Hmm.
I'd take a day and a night and go check it out. So that's definitely an area where I'd like to explore a little more.
Okay.
Head up to like Whitney Portal and like into the Sierras a little bit more than I was able to go. Um, and then as far as the park itself, I'd like to get to the more lesser traveled parts of the park next time. This
Okay.
being my first time, I went to all the hot spots that you go to right away and did a little bit of exploring. On the western side of the park where all the Joshua trees grow. So
Sure. Yeah.
I did a couple shoots there, but yeah, Death Valley. It's such a large park. You just can't do
Yeah.
it all in one week or one trip. So,
Yeah. No doubt.
I'd like to go just
Back.
explore other parts that I couldn't get to this time.
And of that trip, I suppose, something that I often think about is when I finish up on a trip, I always kind of look and go, okay, the highlight and the low light. So from that, what was the hardest part of that trip?
The hardest part, I was really fortunate where it didn't present a lot of challenges. But one thing, Death Valley is a dirty place. It's very dusty. It's very windy, kicking up sand and dust. So it was a challenge to keep the sand off of my sensor. And I mean, I was there in the winter, so I didn't have to put up with the heat. But I imagine some parts of the year, the heat's a big challenge. But for me, I think it was just keeping my gear clean, so it would save time. Wouldn't have to, clone stamp out all the dust spots in the skies. But I think overall, it was. I mean, I really I had a great trip without any real challenges.
Okay. Okay. So on the flip side to that, what was the best part? What was the highlight of the trip?
I think just being someplace new.
Mm.
And I mentioned how I've never really been to into the desert before. So it was cool to see that kind of ecosystem, see,
Hmm.
the different vegetation that's there, the rock formations. I mean, the salt flats were incredible. The sand dunes, I could go on and on about those sand dunes, but I just think the best part was just the diversity and just being someplace different.
For sure. And I suppose, as you mentioned, each year you go and you find somewhere new and somewhere to explore and such like that. So where are you going to go next year?
Well, that's still kind of up in the air, but lately, we've been talking about going kind of in your neck of the woods up to Northeast England.
Okay.
Um, my wife and I honeymooned in Alnwick, England, in
Okay.
2016. So we're thinking about going back to that area, Scotland and Northumberland area. So
Very good.
hopefully we
Very
can
good.
make that work out because yeah, that's been one of our favorite places that we've visited together. So
Yeah,
um,
hopefully 2023, you'll get over to get another taste, I suppose, back in relation to that. I did go to Northumberland a couple of years ago, and it's lovely to photograph some really old castles as well there and such like that as well on the coast that you can get some great shots on. And actually, hopefully, all going well in August this year, I'm going to the Isle of Skye to
okay.
go take photographs there as well. So yeah, I'll let you know how that is as well. You might be able to, go to different areas there too, because there's an awful lot to photograph in every country, I suppose. Really, Luke, there's a lot of areas to
Hmm.
photograph. So yeah, hopefully you make that trip. You make that trip happen. Um, and I think kind of coming back to closer to home now. I think from your own point of view.
Hmm.
Who was it last year? Tell me when. A couple of years ago, maybe, or a year ago, you decided that you wanted to open your own photography gallery in Tor
Hmm.
County. Tell us all about that journey. How did it start? How is it going through, and how is it today?
Yeah, so that was last year. Um, I opened opened my own gallery, which has been an amazing experience.
Hmm.
And how I kind of got to that is for years I've been setting up a booth at local farmers markets, art fairs, town festivals, just
Okay.
selling matted prints. And eventually that grew into canvas prints and then metal prints. And my booth just kind of got bigger and bigger.
Hmm.
So I started just wondering, what if I had a gallery? What would that be like?
Hmm.
And then in the fall of 2020, I believe, I was driving through a town here in Door County, Bailey's Harbor, and I
Hmm.
saw "For Rent" sign in the window of this storefront. So just out of curiosity, I stopped and wrote down the phone number and called just to see what rent would be.
Hmm.
And rent was doable. It was so I I decided to take the plunge, sign a lease, and I had
Brilliant.
this big empty room that I had to turn into a gallery and studio space. So um, yeah, so it it was really really neat, and it's nice to have a place that you can put your own photos up on the wall, leave them there.
Hmm.
You know, it's different than an art fair because, you know, you have four walls, you have a
You build it up
roof,
and tear
you
it down.
know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and you don't have to set up or tear down. You can just leave everything up. Um, and yeah, after my first year, it was, I would call it a success, especially considering it's the first year that I was open.
Sure.
People are still kind of learning about, you know, the gallery and that I'm even here. So I
Hmm.
feel like once that word gets out a little more, it's only going to grow. So it's been a positive experience, kind of a
Fantastic.
dream come true. I know a lot of your listeners probably would love to have a studio, and I say, you know, go for it if you have the opportunity.
Do it.
Do it. It's
Yeah.
really a good experience.
And you know what I mean, as you say, I mean it's the first year effectively in relation to it being up and running. You know, you've gone
Hmm.
through the initial surge of should I, shouldn't I, and then all of a sudden you're doing it and you're going, okay, this is actually good. And as you say, you can put your own stamp on that. It can only get bigger and better and stronger as more people know that it's there. And I think the beauty of where you are, I mean, is you get a lot of people that come there as tourists as well, and they pass through that area, and then they see the images of these beautiful things that they've seen themselves, and it's a win-win
Hmm.
situation for you as well. So, like, what can people expect if they're driving through, and all of a sudden they see Luke Collins? What can they expect when they see the gallery? Well, how have you got it set up?
Well, yeah. So they come in, and on the two walls on either side, there's it's just covered in metal prints for the most part. That's kind of my favorite
Nice,
print medium. So that's kind of what they'll see a lot of. I have a few canvases, some acrylics, a few framed prints, a little bit of everything.
nice,
But it's pretty much all Door County photos up. Everywhere you look.
brilliant.
In the center, there's four tables that are set up with smaller prints, matted 5x7s, 8x10s, 11x14s, 12x18s. You know, smaller
Okay.
prints for the for frame.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I calendars. I published a book last year, a photo book of my Door County photos.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, they can just pretty much expect to see a lot of Door County photography. I have a little bit from, you know, a little corner dedicated to my travels, and
Hmm. Hmm.
um, but for the most part, you know, Door County photos are everywhere you look. And you mentioned we're a huge tourist destination for the Midwest and definitely
Hmm.
Wisconsin. So
Hmm.
um, there's a lot of interest in photos from where I am. So really fortunate to have that.
And summer is coming now as well, so hopefully you'll get a very, very busy season ahead of you, and a lot of people will discover for the first time, or even people coming back after the second time and the third time. And as the years will go on, you'll have people that come back every year and they buy a different print, and that's the way hopefully it will go for you as well. Where can people find more information on your gallery? Actually, have you got it on your website? Is it linked off your website, or has it got its own specific area that people can find it on?
Yeah, you can find it right on my website, lukecollinsphotography.com. There's a menu item like print store. You can click on, and that'll take you to, you know, the where you can order prints online and just see information about the gallery and the store itself. But yeah, it's all on the site.
Okay, well, look, I'll put links into the show notes anyway as well, and I'll link into it so people can, find your work and obviously see the beauty that you have within that gallery. And if they're ever, like I say, going to Door County, take photographs themselves, stop in as well and see, your beautiful, I suppose, a range of work that you actually, I know, no doubt have on the walls. I haven't visited yet because I haven't traveled, but I know that when I do go back to Wisconsin, I'll be, straight in knocking on the door. And even if you're close, I don't care. I'll ring you and say, come on.
Sure, anytime.
So, listen, I have one final question before I go to my next break, right? And it's a question that I started asking around maybe 5 or 6 episodes ago, but I want to start asking everybody the same question now, I think. I think it's an interesting question, which is this: is it the photographer that creates the image, or is it the scene that presents itself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of really interesting answers, and have been getting a lot of interesting answers. For me, I think it's going to sound kind of like a cop out, but I think it's both. I really
Okay.
do because you know, when we're out in the scene, we can only take photos of what's in front of us, you know, and the conditions that we have. I don't do sky replacements, anything like that. Nothing against it. It's just not what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of handcuffed by what's there in front of me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in that case, it's the scene that dictates, you know, our photos.
Mm-hmm.
However, on the other hand, you also, as a photographer, it's up to us to use our creativity, our equipment, our lens choices to take this scene, whatever's in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
and turn it into a compelling photograph and find a good composition, an interesting
Mm-hmm.
composition, and make kind of sense out of that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, yeah, I think it's a little bit of both.
Well, it's interesting because most people actually are leaning to a little bit of both. I mean,
Okay.
and that's the thing. I think it is potentially a little bit of both. And I'm not ever going to tell somebody that I disagree with their view because it's their view and I want to get their view in relation to it. But
Hmm.
the way I would look at it is that you can get a photographer to go into what looks like an innate scene and pull an image from that. Or you can get a photographer to go into a scene which is natural beauty and not get a great image from that. Because that's where I think the dichotomy comes between the two of them. Because if you've got a beautiful scene, okay, you would have all the gear, all knowing what you're doing, and all of a sudden somebody rocks up in their car at that moment in time, takes out their phone, takes a picture. Okay, the scene presented itself for them. They didn't know what they were doing, but the
Hmm.
photographer planned everything. They went through all the apps, all the planning, all the time planning, everything to be there at that point, and they got the
Hmm.
image. So that's what I'm saying. I think it's an interesting question because it is a mixture of both, absolutely. But without a good scene, it takes a special type of photographer to pull an image from that. But with a very, very good scene, anybody, technically speaking, with a bit of luck, could capture an image as well. So that's my view
Hmm.
in it as well. So yeah, I think your answer is absolutely spot on. I'll keep asking the question for everybody else as well going forward because I think it is one that makes you think.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really good question. It's very interesting to think about, and
Yeah, good answer.
yeah, it's
Good answer.
sure.
Good answer. All right. So look, I'm going to take my last break and I'll be back. I've got 3 staple questions to ask every single guest, and I'm looking forward now, Luke, to asking you the same questions. So we'll be right back after this. If you're enjoying this episode of the Irish Photography Podcast, why not jump back and listen to the back catalogue we have of episodes, where you'll get some great insights from fantastic guests, gear reviews, lots of hints and tips, and above all else, keeping you company while you drive or relax. Thanks very much for listening. Please consider subscribing, leaving a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. And you're very welcome back to the final part of the Irish Photography Podcast. So, Luke, like I said, I've got 3 questions I ask every single guest, and I'm really looking forward now to hearing your answers. So, first question is a funny photography story. What's yours?
Yeah, I don't really have anything that's really all that funny, but one thing I find kind of interesting, and I'm sure this happens to you and happens to a lot of people listening, is how we're at in a park somewhere, a national park or a viewpoint or something, and we're there all by ourselves off in the corner somewhere, and then a tour bus comes up
Mm-hmm.
or a car full of people, and they all get out and they beeline it right towards you and take out their phones. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
shooting like Bryce Canyon with, a 70 to 200, and they put their phones right next to my telephoto lens. And um, yeah, it always makes me chuckle, and my wife teases me whenever it happens because it seems to happen to us quite a bit. Um, but yeah, that's
You're like a
it just always
magnet.
kind of makes me laugh when it happens.
Yeah, you're like a magnet for these people because all of a sudden they see this and they go, "Oh, he's got a camera. There must be a good shot over there. I'm going to go over here and take that same photo." But exactly that, you're there with your camera. They rock up with their phone and stand in front of
Yeah.
your camera as well most of the time too.
Oh, that happens too, but they must think I know what I'm doing, so I take it as a compliment.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, second question: what gear
Mhm.
do you shoot with?
Yeah, so I shoot with Sony. My main camera is a Sony A7R III.
Nice.
I love that camera. I've been shooting with it for about 2 or 3 years. Um, and then my favorite lens that I shoot on is the Sony 12 to 24 GM lens.
Nice.
I absolutely love shooting at 12 millimeters. It's so wide compared
Wide.
to, if you're stuck at 16 or 15, depending on your lens,
Hmm.
even 14. I mean, 12 just gives you a whole different, look to your
Perspective.
photos.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I love that lens. That's probably what I shoot on the most. But in my camera bag with me is the 24 to 70, 70 to 200 to get the whole range. But um, yeah, so Sony is my main kit. I've dabbled with other brands, but Sony's I've been really happy with the camera and the controls and yeah,
And the
it's just
output. Yeah, yeah.
it's
Like you got a
been yeah.
great dynamic range as well on the Sony's. I mean, I shoot Canon, and I'm Canon for life. I won't ever change. But I know that Sony are really, really good from the whole dynamic range that you can get there, and what you can pull back from the shadows as well as exceptional. And what legs do you, what feet do you put it on? So what's your tripod?
I have a what is it? It's oh my gosh, I can't remember the brand. It's sold by B&H Photo.
Okay,
And it's
it has three
similar
legs.
to a it has three legs. Um yeah, oh my gosh. It's kind of a generic really right stuff type
Okay,
of tripod. So
okay,
yeah, so I shoot on that with a really right stuff ball head BH50, I think it is,
very good,
with the panning head on it.
very good.
And that it's extremely sturdy. It holds up in any wind that I might run into. It's yeah, it's awesome tripod. Wish I
Perfect,
remembered the
perfect.
name of it.
It's a good one. It does what it's supposed to do. It holds your camera steady. That's all that matters.
Yeah, absolutely, that's right.
So I hope you can remember the name of one other product anyway. So the
Yeah.
third segment that I have is a thing called a VSP. So it's a very solid product. It's a product you wouldn't leave home without. You put your name to it if you could. So what's yours?
Yeah, so we've talked a lot about winter photography. So for me, since I photograph so much in the winter, I always have a pair of winter photography gloves.
Okay.
And the brand is, I'm not sure, I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, but it's Valorette or
Valorette.
Valorette.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep,
Valorette. Yeah.
and they're amazing. They have different. I think I have two pairs, one for lighter winter, and then one for colder days. And yeah, they've just been fantastic. They've on the palms. There's grips, so you can
Hmm.
handle the gear with confidence that you're not going to drop it. Like most photography gloves, the
Hmm.
finger kind of flips open, and you
Yeah.
can
And the thumb.
control. But yeah, those, I think I've been shooting with those probably, I think I bought my first pair probably 4 years ago now. And
Okay. Okay.
I wouldn't buy any other brand of photography glove.
It's a phenomenal VSP, and it is something I think that is really, really important because if your hands get cold, your
Hmm.
dexterity is gone, but also you start feeling uncomfortable, and you kind of going, okay, I want to cut this trip short or whatever it might be. So to be able to be out there and be able to
Hmm.
use the camera in comfort and warmth, I think is really, really, really important. Yeah, great, 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 great VSP. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Okay, so we're almost actually there to the end of this. I can't believe it already, but um, tell me what's next for you now, and coming into the summertime. So what's happening now? You're back home, you've had all your trips. Are you still going to go out regularly? Have you got weddings coming up? Are you getting set for the summer season? What's next?
Yeah, so we're about a month away from the summer tourist season to start. So I'm just kind of spending time preparing the gallery. I'm ordering prints, new prints for the wall, new matted prints,
Hmm.
just kind of restocking and replenishing my inventory. And then, yeah, I mean, wedding season's coming up, so I'm preparing for all of those. It's going to be another busy summer.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I guess long term, I've been looking into providing like guided tours or like small
Nice.
group workshops, because it's something that I think people would really enjoy in Door County because there's so many places to take people. So I thought it would be cool to be a resource for
Very good.
photographers looking for a place to shoot while they're here. I've been kind of putting together ideas for my second book, and just a lot of irons on the fire right now to kind of get
Exciting
everything
times.
set for the year.
Yeah,
I'm sorry?
exciting times ahead. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it is. It's I always look forward to summer here, so it's fun to prepare for another season.
Happy days. And I suppose, you've already mentioned earlier on, but where can people find more information on you? So what's your website? What's your social handles?
Yeah, so my website is lukecollinsphotography.com. And yeah, you can find pretty much links to everything that I'm on from there. I'm pretty active on Instagram. That's probably the best place to follow. My handle's at LukeJC1.
Okay.
And yeah, that's where I'm the most active. I post a couple times a week usually. And yeah, that's and all my links are on there too. So
Super.
yeah.
Well, look, I'll put all those links into the show notes, Luke. It's been an absolute pleasure having a conversation with you, to finally see you as well face to face. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm looking forward now to continuing to follow your social journey, and hopefully someday soon when I get back across, I'll be back up to Door County and I'll be knocking on the door as well to have a look at your fantastic gallery. Luke, it's been a great conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you very, very much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Darren. It's good to see your face as well, and to have a chance to have a conversation with you a little more in person. So thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Thanks, man. And sure, look, we'll grab a coffee when I'm around anyway, sure, for definite the next time.
Sounds good. Dude. Looking forward to it.
Thanks. Look, I always sign off the podcast here in a phrase which is Irish for bye for now. And I'll say to you in Wisconsin, from me in Ireland, slán go fóill.
Thanks, Darren.
Hey guys, if you dig what you're hearing, why don't you jump over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating and don't forget to share with your friends. With all that done, we'll see you next week, and remember, keep shooting.